He walked into his office at George Steinbrenner Field in Tampa, pulled out his iPad, and played a TikTok video. A clip of two men arguing with each other before one of them threw a big gulp cup at a car. The liquid smothered the windows. The men kept yelling. The video ended, and Brian Cashman, the 58-year-old general manager of the New York Yankees, the longest-tenured GM in the history of Major League Baseball, the man who has been running the most scrutinized sports franchise on the face of the earth for 28 consecutive seasons, laughed. He said watching TikTok videos was a nice diversion from the noise. He said it with the ease of a man who has been operating at the highest level of pressure in professional sports since before most of his players were born, and who has learned, through 4 World Series titles, through 17 years of title drought, through George Steinbrenner's fury and the boss's death, and the rise and fall of Derek Jeter, and the emergence of Aaron Judge, and everything that has happened in the Bronx between 1998 and March of 2026, that the only way to survive as the general manager of the New York Yankees is to block out the noise. All of it. The radio hosts who have been demanding your firing for a decade, the social media accounts dedicated to cataloging your mistakes, the fan bases of 29 other franchises who consider you the villain, the $300 million question that Hal Steinbrenner will not answer in public and that Cashman can only respond to by saying it could go both ways. The noise is everywhere, and it has been everywhere for 28 years. And yet, here he is, in March 2026, 13 days before opening day, watching a big gulp video on his iPad and telling a Fox Sports reporter that the Yankees are going to shock the world this season. Not those exact words, but the implication of every word he said in that office, the defiance in his voice when he told critics they were wrong, the confidence in his tone when he pointed to Gerrit Cole throwing 97.5 miles per hour in the Florida sun, the specific pride with which he described every acquisition and every piece of the 2026 roster, all of it added up to a man who believes, without reservation and without the kind of hedge that lesser executives attach to predictions they are not fully confident in, that what he has built is going to win. But here is the $300 million question. Is he right? Is Brian Cashman's quiet, methodical, widely criticized, allegedly unimaginative offseason actually the smartest thing any general manager in the American League has done this winter? Or is he leading the Yankees into another October exit that will finally end the longest tenure in the history of the franchise? This is the complete story of Brian Cashman, the plan he built, the roster he assembled, and the honest answer to whether it is actually going to work. Brian McGuire Cashman was born on July 3, 1967, in Rockville Centre, New York, a village on the south shore of Long Island in Nassau County, one of those communities that exists in the space between New York City and the suburbs, close enough to the energy of the city to absorb it, and far enough away to have its own identity. He was raised in Washingtonville, New York, a small town in Orange County, about 60 miles north of Manhattan in the Hudson Valley region, where George Washington maintained his military headquarters during the Revolutionary War, and where the landscape is defined by the Appalachian foothills and the kind of quiet, tree-lined streets that produce people who are fundamentally grounded, regardless of how much noise eventually surrounds them. He was the middle of 5 children born to Nancy and John Cashman, an Irish Catholic family where baseball was not merely a pastime but a genuine obsession. His father John managed Pompano Park in Pompano Beach, Florida, which is how John Cashman and George Steinbrenner became friends, a friendship that would eventually change Brian's life in ways that neither of them could have anticipated when it began. As a child, Cashman attended a summer baseball camp hosted by Bucky Dent, the Yankees shortstop whose unexpected home run over the Green Monster at Fenway Park in the 1978 one-game playoff remains one of the most dramatic moments in the franchise's history. That camp was not just a summer activity. It was the first direct contact between a boy who loved baseball and the institution that would eventually define his professional life. In 1982, through a family friend named Ralph Branca, the Brooklyn Dodgers pitcher famously known for throwing the pitch that Bobby Thompson hit for the shot heard round a world in 1951, the 13-year-old Brian Cashman served as a batboy for the Los Angeles Dodgers during their spring training in Florida. He walked into a major league spring training environment for the first time. He watched professional baseball players prepare for a season, and whatever uncertainty he had about what he wanted to do with his life was resolved in those days in Florida. He wanted to be inside professional baseball, not on the field, inside the organization, making the decisions. He enrolled at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C., a Division III institution that offered him the specific opportunity to play baseball competitively while pursuing an academic program serious enough to prepare him for the career he had in mind. He was a 4-year starter at second base for the Catholic Cardinals. He was the team's leadoff hitter. He set a school record for most hits in a single season, a record that has since been broken, but that reflects the kind of consistency and discipline at the plate that good leadoff hitters develop. And in 1986, while still in college, at 19 years old, he began working as an intern for the New York Yankees in the minor league scouting department. During the day, he evaluated players. At night, he worked security. 2 jobs, simultaneously, while taking classes. That combination of ambition and willingness to do. He graduated from Catholic University with a degree in history in 1989. The Yankees offered him a full-time position as a baseball operations assistant. He accepted. He moved to Tampa, where the Yankees' player development operations were centered, and worked as an assistant farm director from 1990 through 1992. He came back to New York and became Assistant General Manager of Baseball Administration in November 1992, a move that was accelerated significantly by the events of 1990, when George Steinbrenner was banned from baseball for hiring a private investigator to dig up damaging information about outfielder Dave Winfield. Steinbrenner's suspension forced a restructuring of the Yankees' front office that created openings for younger executives to take on more responsibility than they would have otherwise. Cashman played a significant role in assisting Gene Michael, then the Yankees' general manager, during the period of Steinbrenner's suspension. His advancement through the ranks was not accidental. It was the product of being in the right place at the right time and being capable enough to handle the responsibility when it arrived. He became assistant general manager in 1992 and held that role through the tenure of general manager Bob Watson, the man who oversaw the 1996 World Series championship built around the core of Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera, Jorge Posada, and Andy Pettitte. And then, in February 1998, Watson resigned and Cashman was named Senior Vice President and General Manager of the New York Yankees at 30 years old, the second youngest general manager in Major League Baseball history at the time of his appointment. Given a 1-year contract for $300,000 and responsible for the most storied, most financially powerful, most publicly scrutinized franchise in the sport. What he did in his first decade defies reasonable expectation for a 30-year-old general manager in his first significant front office leadership role. The 1998 Yankees won 114 games in the regular season, the most by any American League team since the 1920s, and then won the World Series. In 1999, the Yankees won the World Series again. In 2000, the Yankees won the World Series again. 3 consecutive World Series championships, in a sport where winning a single championship requires navigating 162 regular season games, 3 rounds of playoffs with no room for a bad series, and the accumulated skill of the best athletes in the world across every competing franchise. Cashman became the only GM in baseball history to win World Series titles in each of his first 3 seasons. The only one, ever, in the history of the sport, in his first 3 years. He won the championship every single time.
The dynasty reached its fourth World Series in 4 years in 2001, when the Yankees fell to the Arizona Diamondbacks in one of the most dramatic 7-game series in baseball history, remembered most for the ninth-inning comeback in Game 7 when Luis Gonzalez ended it with a walk-off single off Mariano Rivera. The Yankees lost, and the dynasty, by the standards of winning at least 4 consecutive championships, ended. But Cashman continued building competitive teams, making the playoffs in each of his first 10 seasons from 1998 through 2007, a feat that had never been accomplished by any manager or general manager in the history of the sport. 10 straight postseason appearances, a winning record in every single season, the kind of institutional consistency that only exists when the person making the decisions actually knows what they are doing. The drought began in 2008. The Yankees missed the playoffs for the first time in Cashman's tenure, and what he did next, how he responded to the first genuine failure of his tenure, tells you everything about who Brian Cashman is as an executive. He did not hedge. He did not pursue a rebuilding strategy. He did not suggest to Hal Steinbrenner that the franchise needed to take a step back, trim payroll, and recycle. He went out and signed CC Sabathia to a 7-year, $161 million contract. He signed A.J. Barnett. He signed Mark Teixeira. He traded for Nick Swisher. He built the most expensive roster in baseball and dared the sport to beat him. And in 2009, the Yankees won their 27th World Series championship, their first in 9 years, on a roster that was simultaneously an expression of everything the critics said was wrong about the Yankee way: massive free agent spending, veteran players, payroll north of $200 million, and the most unambiguous possible evidence that sometimes the way the critics say is wrong is actually the only way that works. The 16 years since 2009 have been harder. The championship drought, now in its 17th year, has fueled a persistent and increasingly loud narrative that Cashman has lost his touch, that the sport has passed him by, that the analytics revolution, the shift to younger, cheaper rosters, the success of the Houston Astros and the Tampa Bay Rays and the Los Angeles Dodgers, with their data-driven approaches to roster construction, have exposed the limitations of a general manager who came up in a different era and has not fully adapted to the new one. The critics point to specific misses: the failure to sign Bryce Harper, the Giancarlo Stanton trade that produced a slugger locked into a contract that his body increasingly could not sustain, the years of organizational uncertainty at shortstop before Anthony Volpe arrived, the bullpen dependency that made the Yankees terrifying in short series and brittle over the course of a full season. The critics are not entirely wrong. Some of those decisions were mistakes. Some of those failures were avoidable. And 17 years without a championship from the team that spent more money than any other franchise for most of those 17 years is a legitimate grievance that Cashman himself acknowledges without deflection.
But here is the context that the critics rarely provide in full. The 17-year drought is real. The 23 postseason appearances in 28 seasons are also real. The winning record in every single season of his tenure, every season from 1998 through the present, is real. The Yankees have produced a winning record for 33 consecutive seasons, second longest in Major League Baseball history, behind the team's 39-season streak from 1926 through 1964, Yardbarker. 33 consecutive winning seasons, in a sport with 30 franchises, in an era of competitive balance rules designed specifically to prevent dynasties, in a league where the Boston Red Sox have won 4 championships since 2004, and the Houston Astros have won 1, and the Tampa Bay Rays have reached the World Series, and every credible competitor the Yankees face in the American League East is well-funded and well-managed. 33 consecutive winning seasons. That is not the record of an executive who has lost his touch. That is the record of an executive who has maintained standards that most franchises would trade their current general manager to achieve.
Cashman said at the January 2026 media availability in Tampa, "It is not the same roster. I disagree, it is the same team running it back. Not afraid to run with the quality and talented roster of players that we do have. I think we have been consistent with that throughout the entire winter. I have been openly willing to challenge anybody that says we do not have a championship caliber roster and team." Clutch points. Championship caliber. That is not a hedge. That is a direct challenge to every analyst, every talking head, every fan account on social media that has spent the winter saying the Yankees are running it back with the same mediocre group that got bounced in the American League Division Series. And the specific thing that makes Cashman's challenge more credible than it would otherwise be is the name that he has been pointing to every time someone questions whether the roster is different from last year's. The name that changes everything about this team's ceiling and this team's realistic championship probability. Gerrit Cole. Cashman referenced the return of ace Gerrit Cole, who missed all of 2025 after undergoing Tommy John surgery and could be back in action sometime in May. He mentioned having last year's trade deadline acquisitions, relievers David Bednar, Camilo Doval, and Jake Bird, third baseman Ryan McMahon, and infielder-outfielder Jose Caballero, as full-year contributors rather than partial season additions. Yardbarker. Cole, throwing 97.5 miles per hour in Tampa on March 11, 2026, 14 months after surgery, speaking to reporters about pitching in a spring training game. Scheduled to throw again on March 18th, likely to be activated sometime in late May or early June, and when he is activated, when the man who won the 2023 American League Cy Young Award with a 2.63 ERA and the man who was one of the 3 best pitchers in baseball for 5 straight seasons before his elbow ended his 2025 season before it began, walks out of that bullpen in May and throws his first pitch of the 2026 regular season, the conversation about whether the Yankees are a championship-caliber roster will not need Cashman to defend it. The answer will be on the mound. The 2026 Yankees roster, as Cashman has assembled it, is built around 3 overlapping components: the present, the reinforcements, and the depth. The present is Aaron Judge, the 2-time American League Most Valuable Player, the man who broke Roger Maris's American League home run record in 2022 with 62, who has been the unambiguous best position player in the American League for 4 of the last 5 seasons. Judge, at 34 years old, is in the final years of the 9-year, $360 million contract he signed in December 2022, the deal that Cashman announced with Aaron in the same 72-hour window in which he also signed his own 4-year extension through 2026, the deal that confirmed the Yankees' commitment to both their franchise player and their franchise builder simultaneously. Judge's health, he appeared in 129 games in 2025 and hit 33 home runs before the ALDS exit against Toronto, is the single most important variable in whether the 2026 Yankees win the World Series. When Judge is healthy, the Yankees are different. When he is not, they are merely good. The reinforcements are Cole and the trade deadline acquisitions that arrived in 2025 and are now full-season contributors. David Bednar, acquired from Pittsburgh at the deadline, gives Aaron Boone a closing option behind the 8th inning that the Yankees had been searching for since Aroldis Chapman's decline years earlier. Camilo Doval, acquired from San Francisco at the same deadline, provides another high-leverage reliever capable of handling the 8th inning on days when the game situation calls for it. Ryan McMahon solved the third base problem that had plagued the Yankees since the end of DJ LeMahieu's productive years. Cashman also signed Cody Bellinger in free agency, re-signing the 2022 National League Most Valuable Player, whose return alone would bring the payroll over $300 million before any other moves were made. Yahoo Sports. Bellinger in center field, McMahon at third, Bednar and Doval in the bullpen, and Cole on the mound in late May. Those are not marginal improvements on the 2025 roster. Those are the difference between a team that loses to Toronto in the ALDS and a team that is playing in November. And then there is the plan, the specific strategic insight that Cashman has been communicating to anyone willing to listen all winter, and that most critics have.
The noise, in this case, is a relentless stream of criticism and title expectations. Cashman has a ticking clock in his head, reminding him that the Yankees have not won a championship since 2009. Due to that drought, criticism of Cashman has become as predictable as October in the Bronx. Every roster decision by the Yankees GM is dissected. Every postseason exit is used as evidence that the architect of baseball's most successful and scrutinized franchise has lost his touch. He knows the clock is ticking. He said so. He acknowledged it without deflection or excuse. The 17-year drought is real. The window, the specific championship window defined by the overlap of Aaron Judge's prime years and Gerrit Cole's healthy years, is narrowing. 2026 is not just another season for the Yankees. It is the season when the pieces that Cashman has assembled, Cole returning from surgery, Judge still at an elite level, Bellinger in center field, McMahon at third, a bullpen that is genuinely one of the best in the league, are all simultaneously available and simultaneously capable. The window does not stay open forever. Cashman knows that. And he is building this specific roster for this specific moment with the full awareness that the window that was open in 2024 when the Yankees reached the World Series and the window that closes when Judge enters the back half of his 30s and Cole's elbow becomes a question mark again, requires something to happen in between. Something real, something different from the ALDS exits and the Blue Jays series that ended 2025. Something that has not happened in the Bronx since 2009, a championship. The 28th, the one that Brian Cashman has been building toward since he walked into that office in 1998 as a 30-year-old with a $300,000 contract and became the youngest general manager ever to win the World Series. He is 58 now. He has been in that office for 28 years. He is watching TikTok videos on his iPad and laughing at big gulp cups and telling anyone who will listen that the noise does not bother him and that the roster is championship caliber and that Gerrit Cole at 97.5 miles per hour means this team is different from last year's team in the way that matters most. He is right. And on the morning of March 14, 2026, with opening day 13 days away, and Cole scheduled to throw again in 4 days, and Aaron Judge fully healthy, and Cody Bellinger in center field, and David Bednar in the bullpen, for the first time in a long time, the plan that Brian Cashman built in the quiet of this offseason, while the critics were demanding moves he did not make and spending he did not authorize, is starting to look exactly like what he said it was all along. A championship caliber roster, ready to shock the world.